Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven, and today our special guest is Sharif Khan. So Sharif is the author of debut fantasy novel Brave Fortune and the inspirational book Psychology of the Hero Soul, as mentioned in Reader's Digest. He lives in Toronto, is a former bookseller and graduate of the Humber School for Writers. He also served as a Writing Workshop Facilitator for Writers Collective of Canada, as well as director of the MetroActive Writers Club. And you can follow him on Instagram and X, and the links will be below along with his author page. So welcome, Sharif.
Yes, welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, tell me a little bit about how you ended up being a writer and a bookseller and all that stuff. So what's your background?
Sure, yeah, I'll share a little bit of my transformational author journey. I wanted to start first with why, like what my belief is. I believe in the revolutionary power of stories to break through barriers and unite people to experience more, more agency and love and freedom in their lives. And I believe that, in the space of story, there really are no limits, no barriers, no boundaries. Nothing is impossible. And I want to be able to share that possibility mindset. I'm on a mission to do that by writing great stories that inspire people to be bigger, better, and braver. So that's my why. That's my belief system. And that's
Okay.
what gets me going and continues me to persevere for many, many years. So I've been doing this for at least over 2 decades. And I would say, the writing bug hit me very, very early.
Mm.
Maybe I was probably around 6 or 7 years old. So I was born in Scarborough. I'm a Pakistani Canadian, and I was
Oh,
born.
no, I was born downtown, but I grew up in Scarborough.
You grew
Yeah,
up in Scarborough.
yeah.
So at that time, in the 70s, it was a different situation. I grew up with a lot of bullying and racism. And, just to give you like paint a picture, I stayed at my best friend's place one time and uh, stayed overnight. And when I woke up in the morning, there was like a mob of people standing outside, yelling racial slurs and
Oh my God.
throwing eggs and telling us to go home. So that's sort of like the environment that I grew up in. And it didn't help to have like a weird condition where I was constantly bleeding from my nose.
No.
I don't know if it was because I took one or too many punches and I had a deviated septum or if it was some
Okay.
other thing, but I was just constantly bleeding from my nose. That's all I can remember. So my escape, so obviously I gravitated away from sports and physical activities, and I became more of a bookish person. So my escape was the world of stories. I was reading adventures like, the Treasure Island or Huckleberry Finn or even Shogun. And I retreated into the world of stories. My father encouraged me to write stories. I was often in the basement working on my father's manual typewriter with whiteout. Back in those days, there was no internet, no
Yeah.
smartphones, no email. And I was just whipping out these stories, and I got complimented on those stories as a kid at night school. They would compliment me on my creativity. So that's what fueled my confidence. And one thing solidified my story writing bug is I I did a stint in elementary school in Karachi, and then came back to Scarborough. And then I was uprooted again overseas from the cold winters of Canada
Oh.
to the hot deserts of Saudi Arabia
Oh.
on the Red Sea coast of Jeddah, where my father got a job. So I enrolled in American school there, and I experienced racism all over again across another continent because it was an
But you would
American
think because
school.
you're going to an American school in Saudi Arabia, like,
Yeah.
why? Okay.
But it's like they were so guarded, they didn't want people from the outside,
Oh.
like, whether it's Canadians or like, people like, brown skin color of myself. Like, there it was like a very American white. Most
Oh,
of them
okay. Yeah.
was that. And so foreigners, like, entering their space, like, because they were American expats, they kind of like, frowned upon that. So it was kind of surprising that, I grew up with that kind of like traumatic inferiority complex and carried it over across the border in Saudi Arabia where you think like,
Where most people are like, they look like you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, why?
exactly.
It doesn't make sense, but okay. Oh
So,
my.
but the one thing that really event that stuck out with me is I wrote this I excelled in I sucked at sports. I was one of the last people that got to get chosen on team sports, which was humiliating and embarrassing. But I did excel in the world of arts, especially writing stories and drawing. And I had written this story, a sci-fi alien story. I got an A on that. And my teacher asked me to read that in class. And so as I was reading that sci-fi story out loud, I could see the whole class, including a couple of bullies that had verbally abused me, were listening in complete rapt attention, completely engrossed and following like every single word that I was saying. And so it's from that young age that I experienced the power of story to unite people and to really melt away barriers of prejudice and racism and unite people. So that's sort of like what got me going on a story level.
Okay. And then eventually, did you do high school and college or
Yes,
university there? Okay.
I went to high school in New Jersey. I went to a private boarding school there in New Jersey, and that was a much kinder experience for me there.
You're in the
But
States.
my father encouraged me to go into like I wanted to go into an Ivy League American school.
Mhm.
So I went to this prep school in New Jersey, got accepted to this prep school there, Blair Academy. And so I studied high school there. And unfortunately, like my in my senior year, my father passed away in a car accident.
Oh.
So I was in my senior year, and I still needed to help my mom.
Mhm.
So we transferred over from Saudi Arabia to Toronto, Scarborough again, and I went up going back to Canada again to help my mom, and I graduated in at York University
Mhm.
in majoring in psychology and then minored in business. My father was a psychologist, so I kind of like was going
Mm.
in my father's footsteps. But JF, even at this time, I didn't really have any inkling as to like wanting to be like a an author and a book writer as a career. It wasn't until I became a bookseller at a bookstore manager on Yonge and St. Clair in Toronto, which I managed and ran for about 5 years,
Oh, what was it
where
called?
it was it's funny. It was called Bestsellers. It was like a franchise chain. It was called
Okay.
Bestsellers, and we would carry the latest and greatest, hottest bestsellers, and people would be lining up to get the latest
Oh.
best-selling books. And so as people were lining up, and I was engaging them and talking about stories and books, that's when it sort of dawned on me, this is really a lot of fun, and why not me? I'd love to do something like that, and that's what got me going. That's what started me on my writing adventure as a career.
Okay. Now, are you still practicing in psychology or?
No, no, I'm
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's not really my background. I did write a book called Psychology of the Hero Soul,
Mm.
which is an inspirational book on awakening the hero within and developing people's heroic potential. And I was inspired because I wanted to see how leaders, broke through their own barriers of like, prejudice and racism and getting themselves out of like their mental blocks and their mental fears. And that was released shortly after 9/11. So you can imagine I had like a lot of fear with authority figures because I was still going back
Yes.
and forth to the States. And every time I went, either by myself or with friends, I'd have this extended 20, 30-minute conversation about just almost like an interrogation. And even when I was driving on the roads in Canada, I'd get stopped over for no particular reason other than just my ethnicity. Um, and so I remember like this moment where I was doing a speaking engagement to the Toronto police at their headquarters on Yonge and College. And I was speaking to a sea of police officers in uniforms, armed. And as I was giving out my presentation, my knees were just buckling and shaking behind the podium as I gave that speech. And so it's kind of like I used my own book to shatter out of my own, like the hero soul, to bring out some of my own heroic capabilities and just get past the fear. So that's how I started my first book.
Okay.
And I did a whole
Now,
speaking tour on that.
oh, oh wow. And then eventually you ended up at this Humber School for Writers?
That's right, yes. I went to the Humber School for Writers and I was paired up with my mentor, Giles Blunt, who he wrote the 40 Words for Sorrow detective novel, which got turned into a hit detective TV series on BBC called Cardinal. And he mentored me for about 6 months on this Humber School for Writers project, doing line by line edits and just offering me feedback and inspiration. And this was a thriller novel, which I have not titled and which I have not yet released. I'm going to release that after my comedy novel, which I'm going to release in the summertime. So, but how the Brave Fortune epic fantasy came about is, I wanted to carry out that transformational hero's journey of alchemical journey of going from lead into gold and do it into a fantasy story. And that's like I'm titling it like as a kind of like the alchemist meets the Prince of Darkness. In a dark world where dreaming is forbidden, uh, one man dares to dream the impossible. So that's sort of like the tagline for that book. And Humber came into the rescue because they actually designed the Humber School of Creative Publishing. They designed the book cover for me and they did the copy editing. One of their students did
Oh
the
wow.
copy editing. So that was a lot of help when I put that out on Amazon.
Oh. Now you've also facilitated workshops with Writers Collective of Canada. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, yes, that was known as, I believe, the Toronto's Collective of Canada and became the Writers Collective of Canada. So I volunteered for their program. It was you had to take their workshop facilitation workshop to and their training to be able to become a facilitator. So once I was there, then I became a facilitator of writing workshops there. And I worked at like I went to a number of different places, and there was one I believe it was 519 on the Progress Place. It was a nonprofit helping people with facing like mental health barriers. So there, I was co-facilitating with a friend of mine, Sahir Sheikh, at the time. She's also a writer, and at that time, I was like, the way it works is like it's completely non-judgmental and you only like you do a few writing prompts and then based on those writing prompts people just write freely and you're only allowed to like so there's no criticism, you're only talking about what's strong and what's resonant and what's good about the piece and what you liked about that piece to help instill confidence in people. So that was my volunteer role there at the Writers Collective of Canada.
Now you've written multiple books. Do you have like a habit that you follow for writing?
um I not like a very specific habit, but a very organic habit where I completely, first and foremost, completely immerse myself in the world of the story by doing as much research as I possibly can about the the characters, the settings, the main concepts and the main ideas, some of the highlights and milestones of the book. And that way, I believe in an immersive strategy where I completely immerse myself, and then the writing becomes more and more natural. It's kind of like a tea bag where you put it into a cup of tea, and then it just it just like spreads out and becomes the tea. So
Okay.
that's how I do it. And um, one thing that I did differently with the comedy novel is I wrote the book blurb ahead of time, ahead of schedule. I wrote the like how I wanted the back of the book blurb to um, like the quotes and the testimonials. So it's kind of like the promise to the reader of what I want to deliver, and that helped kind of like keep me focused on the book project. And I found that much helpful, and it speeded up the project.
Okay. Now, you have a fantasy book out called Brave Fortune. Can you give us maybe the back cover story for this?
Yeah, I mean, as I was mentioning before, it's I wanted to like write a heroic story where a character could break through um, just these oppressive regimes and dictators and people that are ruling over a planet. But in a way, it's kind of like a metaphorical allegory of how to break through these stories that are just wired into us through the algorithms of social media now, where like we're just sort of like feeding back to ourselves our own fears and negative beliefs, and I wanted to break through that barrier. And so with the Brave Fortune, it's a character is like John Crow, who plays this like a jaded alchemist a jaded son of a fallen alchemist, and goes on this he abandons his mission to save the world and goes on a quest to he joins a group of bandits, robbers, and goes on a quest to find this lost treasure. And in the process of doing that, he kind of finds his true identity and finds what's really limiting him, and he breaks through all of these barriers. So that's sort of like the motif of the Brave Fortune.
Okay, cool. Now, a lot of aspiring writers struggle to finish writing. So, do you have any advice for some of these people?
Yes, you know, don't worry too much about the outcome or the fruits of what's going to happen. Just focus on the process, and just have fun writing. And if you can just focus on one task a day, that's enough, really. If you do a page a day on average, that's a book a year. If
Mm,
you really think about it, that works out to a book a year. So just find out whatever your writing style is. If you like working in short sprints, like 15, 20-minute sprints, schedule those into your calendar every single day for the whole week, and then just show up and be consistent with that. Whereas with myself, I'm more of like a turtle, like a slow and steady wins the race type of a thing. So I'm always like if when I'm working on a book project, I'm working on it 2 or 3 hours a day, and I do my writing, and then about a couple of hours a day I do my reading, because if you're reading other authors' books in that genre, then it helps it helps shape your writing, and it helps develop your writing. But that's the and I'm also I'm a binge writer. I'm a binge person. So if I'm watching like a Netflix series, for example, sometimes I'm just like up like from 7 at night till six in the morning, and I'll watch the whole season
hmm
on Netflix. And I transfer that binge personality into my writing as well. So even though I'm writing like steady, like say Monday to Friday, I might do like a couple of all-nighters where I might start at 7 at night on a Friday and then work all the way till Saturday at noon and then go to sleep. And so if I work a full day or like a full weekend, I can whip out 10 pages, during that weekend, and that covers my average of that exceeds my average of doing 1 page a day. So I know I'm on track. And eventually, before you know it, if you just keep up your pace, you'll eventually have the book will be finished.
Okay, so I have one more question for you. Now, thinking about your books, um, do you think you have any themes or messages that you want to give to your readers?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest theme or message that I want to give to my readers, and it seems to go into all of my books, is you know just when you think that you are ready to give up, or you're ready to call it quits, uh, that's the time when you really need to double down and dig a lot deeper, uh, metaphorically, and as well as physically, if you're hunting for treasure or whatever the case may be. You you know if you're just written one book and haven't had any much success with it, just go ahead and start working on the next book and the next book and the next book, and you start building a pyramid of established success. And many authors, they um, like, for example, I believe it was who was the guy who he wrote this the thriller story, the Eye of the Needle. I forgot, Forsyth, Frederick Forsyth, I believe his name was. And it wasn't until his 11th book where he finally had his first success writing a thriller novel. Or so like a Mike Heron, who wrote the thriller, spy thriller, Slow Horses, which got translated onto Apple TV, big hit show. He was struggling for many years, and his own publisher eventually dropped him because he wasn't having any any success. So that's the one message the theme that I want to get across, is just to keep persisting, just be consistent and persistent.
Now, you're doing a reading for us right now. Give us a little bit of context and then you can start reading.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to do two readings for you. So the first one is going to be from my dystopian epic fantasy novel, Brave Fortune. And it starts on a different planet, Planet Meridon, and it's the first chapter. So no other context is required. And for your audience that's tuned in right now, I'm also going to give a sneak peek reading right after that, on my forthcoming comedy novel, which I'm going to release in summer of 2026. So do stay tuned right till the end. If you need a bit of a laugh, then you might. It's a comedy novel, so you might find it a bit of a refreshing change. I think the world right now, in the dark times we're in, I think the whole world needs a big belly laugh. So right now, I'm going to start with Brave Fortune. First first chapter. In the half-gray dawn, a lone gazelle left its tracks in the desert sand, and the sand lifted against the mighty wind. A smiling brown boy in white raiment stretched out his hand. Behind him, a blinding halo of light pierced the horizon, followed by a towering mushroom cloud that shook the earth, and the boy was no more. It was a beautiful sight to behold, for a sea of magnificent iridescent flowers dotted the entire desert landscape, illuminating the gray walls of dawn with their soft white glow. And the wind carried their sweet scent to all corners of the world. But when the man knelt down to pick one of the flowers, he found in its trembling hands glowing chunks of flesh that burned to the bone, and the wind carried away his screams. John Crow awoke in a pool of sweat, his heart fluttering in his chest as he grasped for air. He felt a burning sensation in his hands and rubbed his palms together to steady the shaking. The feeling of hard calluses rubbing against each other gave him some reassurance that he still had the functioning of his hands. His dreams were getting bolder, more visceral, but this one filled him with a fear he'd never known. He'd fought and killed in many battles, seen much bloodshed and savagery, felt the cold blade of death in his spine, yet nothing came close to the dread he was now feeling. It penetrated to his core and into a dimension he couldn't fathom. Something strange and terrible is about to happen. I can feel it. John pulled aside soaked violet satin sheets and sat on the edge of his bed. Although the air was cool inside, sweat streamed down his pale olive face and bare chest. It felt as if he'd emerged from a blazing furnace, another piece of transmuted metal in one of his father's failed experiments. He wiped a slick of sweat from his brow, bathed in weak morning light, imprisoned in an interlacing pattern of dust beams from the two far windows on either side of his bed. His head was pounding. He dissolved a white tablet in the glass of water on his nightstand. When the water turned pink, he lifted the glass and sipped slowly, enjoying the feel of effervescent bubbles popping on his tongue. After a moment of reflection, John got up out of bed in his knitted underpants and faced the stone wall behind his nightstand. Embedded in the wall was a spectacular rectangular, horizontal, aligned window facing a viewless slab of rock. John stretched his arms toward the window, palms facing out. As he slowly spread his arms apart, the rock slab parted in the middle, its embedded sensors following the motion of his arms until sliding open the full length of the window. John stood spread-eagled in a kind of meditative trance, golden rays of sunlight blanketing his glistening muscles and wavy auburn hair, illuminating his emerald eyes. With the grace of a tiger, John lowered his arms and peered out the window. The sun bled as 1,000 red doves emerged from their twilight flight to return to the Merdon fortress. From his mountaintop hideout, John could see the faint outline of Necropolis, the capital city of planet Merdon. The Merdon Bank, a 40-story pyramid-shaped building encased in black-tinted glass, loomed over the city, a towering monolith shimmering in the sun, its triangular peak suspended in midair, hovering over the rest of the severed structure by some mysterious force. The floating crown of the pyramid served as Sir Wilbur's office, where he managed the planet's financial affairs. The bank was the most prominent edifice of the city, matched only in size by the Merdon fortress, a sprawling gray stone castle where the queen and her sorcerer, Lord Leonard, resided. Beyond the bank, the fortress stood forebodingly in the distance, silhouetted against the hilly outskirts of the city, shrouded in forest. The banker, the queen, and the sorcerer, together they formed an unbreakable threefold word, most unholy to rule the planet. The rest of the city consisted mostly of a well-ordered maze of gray two-story flats, one cubicle per household for the common population. Among this massive rat maze was a peppering of mansions on top of the rocky foothills. These fiefdoms belonged to the untouchable elite class of nobility that John Crow both despised yet longed to be. One day, John would have more wealth and prestige than all of them combined. A day of reckoning will come. So that is a little snippet from my epic fantasy novel, Brave Fortune, which is available on Amazon. And now I'm going to give you all a sneak peek into my comedy novel, which is about an eccentric, mystic, misfit Sufi surfer who goes by the name of Amer Fateh, who unleashes a wave of mischief, chaos, and healing in a broken beach community in Big Sur, California. So this is chapter 2. And while he's looking for his higher self, he ends up inadvertently landing into a predatory cult, unwittingly realizing the guru of this cult offers him a job, and he becomes the #1 salesperson selling enlightenment to the elite. But he doesn't realize that he's joined a cult. So a lot of comedic situations unfold within this novel. And I'm going to read this directly from my phone here. It's a very short piece here. Chapter 2. Come to our retreat, Amer said in his deep, croaking voice, adjusting his headset with one hand while picking his nose with the other. Let your soul be infused with light upon light, nur an Allah nur. Io keenly listened and observed while pretending to answer a customer email inquiry. Amer had been promoted and moved into the vacated open concept workspace next to Io at the mountaintop Insight Institute sales office, getting the coveted wall-to-wall window view of the valley overlooking the ocean. A strategic move by management, no doubt to squeeze more sales between them by instilling competition. We have 3 packages, Amer said. The Fakir package, the Fertilizer package, and the Felicity package. There was something cringingly comical about witnessing his wide girth teetering over a red design chair, hunched over a Hawaiian tropical shirt, hairy arms resting in the minimalist white desk. His body exuded a muddy, musky odor commingled with sweat. Io wondered how he showered, if he showered at all, and did his daily business living in a tent. The Fakir package is $5,000, Amer explained to the prospect listening in on the other end of the line. This is for people who are more spiritually advanced. We provide you with a spiritual tent, blessed by holy monks, and you get to spend 3 days and 3 nights in the woods, fasting in silence and solitude. At the end of the 3 days, we do a sage burning ceremony. Amer took a sip of tea from his big ceramic mug, waiting for a response, and when none came, continued. The Fertilizer package is $10,000. This is for people middle of the road on their spiritual journey. You will spend 5 days meditating in a sacred cave of our mountain, among the bats. At the end of each day, you will sweep up the sacred bat manure to make fertilizer, which will then use to plant fruit trees. Your only cardinal sustenance for each day will be a small bowl of fruit offering for further contemplation. What's the objective, you say? Well, Amer looked up past his computer monitor, scratching his chin, sunlight from the window streaming into his tanned, wrinkled face and oily strands of hair. The philosophy behind it. When life hands you feces, make fertilizer. A muted laugh emitted from Amer's earpiece. It was a woman's voice. Now, the Felicity package is only $20,000 and is the most accessible. It is suitable for beginners, and people at all levels of spiritual evolution can join. It includes all amenities: foot massages, gourmet organic meals, hot spring baths, meditation and yoga classes, and our soul elevation course, which includes an in-person session with His Holiness Guru Dodson. This is a good package to let go of material attachments to money. Amer put his hands together and gave a little bow to the framed photo of Insight founder Guru Dodson that was mounted on an opaque glass divider panel next to his monitor. The same headshot photo of bearded Dodson, round greed-tinted lenses hiding intense eyes and pale skin, flowing chestnut hair, parted in the middle. A garland of orange flowers over a white kurta graced every workstation in the office of 20 agents. So, you'd like the Felicity package? Good choice. How would you like to pay? Can I process that for you now? Would you also like to donate $5,000 to our temple? Amer paused a beat. I will sing a qawwali for you in the pale moonlight when I am whirling drunk with delight in the divine. There was audible laughter on the other end of the line. You'll donate $10,000? Thank you so much. Amer took down the order. Namaste. The divine light in me bows to the divine light in you. Io rolled his eyes. How could such a bullshit artist be living in a tent when he could swindle his way to a penthouse suite at the Ritz? And that's, folks, is a sneak peek into my forthcoming comedy novel, which is coming out this summer in 2026. Thank you.
Well, we're looking forward to it, and thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, JF.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.